Good evening, members, officers, visitors and members of the public. My name is Councillor Andy Booth. I shall be chairing the Swale Borough Council Planning Committee meeting this evening. Please note that this meeting may be recorded and that staff throughout the building will be using body cameras. Data captured during these recordings will be processed and retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy, and the meeting recording may be published on the Council's website. Agenda item number 1, that is the emergency evacuation procedure. We are not expecting an emergency procedure this evening, so if the alarm bell does sound, it will be for real. Everybody please make use of the 2 exits, either on the left of the chamber or the right of the chamber. Do not use the lifts under any circumstances, and make your way downstairs to the main car park, where members of the Democratic Services team and officers present will make sure you're in the right area, basically. Once a full analysis of the building has been undertaken and it has been deemed clear, we will all be allowed back in. If not, it might be an early night. Members must consider each application. There's only one application this evening, and everything that is said in the meeting concerning that application, and make their decision based solely on their planning judgment and information available to them. Following a decision by the members this evening, delegated authority is given to the planning officers to issue that decision notice. Planning permission is neither granted or refused until that notice has been issued. Any member of the council that is not a member of the planning committee may attend as a visiting member and then may speak, having given prior notification. Such visiting members may of course include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee this evening must have undertaken appropriate planning training before doing so. Members must retain their seat in the meeting at all times during the dialogue and questioning. If you leave the chamber for whatever reason, you will not be allowed to vote. Can I ask, please, that all mobile devices and laptops are either set to silent or turned off? Thank you very much. That includes, please, the public gallery. I'd like to welcome our public speakers and remind each of them, we have 7 this evening, that you have 3 minutes each to speak. You'll get an audible warning after 30 seconds are remaining, and the centre speaking chair is in front of me here. Okay. Agenda item 2, please, Kelly. Can we have apologies for absence and substitutes, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Anne Kavanagh. Her substitute is Councillor Angela Harrison. Councillor Kieran Golding. His substitute is Councillor Shelley Cheeseman. And Councillor Claire Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to those members that are substituting this evening. Right, agenda item 3. Can I invite members that have a declaration of disclosable pecuniary interests or disclosable non-pecuniary interests, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a ward councillor and for Bobbin, Lower Helstow and Highwade, but tonight I'm here in the role as a part of the planning committee, and my vote will only be based on what I hear and see tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure whether this is appropriate, but some years ago I did know the owners quite well of Parsonage Farmhouse. I don't believe they still live there, but I thought I'd better just declare it in case, but my mind is open and I will listen to the debate, having read the papers, and make my decision with the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Nobody else. A shot across the bows, members. There's been quite a lot of interest on social media and the press. If anybody has had dialogue or has chosen to engage with the social media or press, all I would say is just be careful this evening as to what you say and how you say it. Okay? I've already asked if anybody's got an interest. Okay. Before we get into the main report of this evening, there is a tabled update which everybody should have, which is 7 or 8 pages. I'm going to adjourn for 10 minutes to be fair, just so that everybody can read and understand that. So the time now is 6 minutes past. We will reconvene at 16 minutes past. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Members, everybody satisfied they've read and understood that? Good. I'd like to remind the meeting that where it is possible, that a fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude there was a real possibility that a member might be predetermined or biased on the agenda item, the member should declare that possibility and leave the room whilst the item is being considered. For the record, nobody has chosen to do so. So, moving on to Part B. This is the main agenda item. Land at the West of Bobbing, Sittingbourne, Kent, Mike Echo 9-8 Quebec Lima. Can we first please have an officer update providing a summary and any updates on the application, please?
Thank you, Chair. So further to the tabled update, at the end it references the outstanding noise response awaited from the Council's Public Protection Officer. The officer has now responded and advised that she's reviewed the applicant's comparison of the environmental statement traffic data with the updated traffic data and advises that the updated flows will not cause a significant impact and that the environmental statement for this application can still be considered valid for both noise and air quality. We've had two further objections. One reiterates comments already set out in the officer report and the tabled update, and a second objection focusing on ecology matters, which I summarise as follows. The developer's ecology assessment and the associated documents cannot be relied on as they are not independent. There is much that is not known about the ecology of the area. KCC Ecology are relying on the developer's ecologist, who are unreliable, for example, as there are hares on the site which have not been identified. There is too much risk granting permission for applications without more reliable reports. The assertion that badgers are only a protected species because of welfare concerns is misleading. They are protected as they are persecuted, including by developers. The developer should consult local badger groups. Skylark mitigation is a serious cause for concern given experiences with the Wises Lane development. Without enforcement, any skylark mitigation conditions cannot be accepted. There is currently a crisis of biodiversity loss and the government's warnings of ecological collapse, yet protections for habitats and biodiversity are weakening. In relation to that objection, I would reiterate that the KCC ecologist has raised no objections in relation to ecology and biodiversity. So that is all in the way of updates, Chair, and I have a presentation whenever you want it.
Thank you very much. Can we have the presentation now, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, so outline planning permission with all matters reserved except for access from Sheppey Way is sought for a mixed-use development comprising up to 2,500 dwellings, 5.21 hectare commercial employment zone, doctor's surgery, sports hub, freeform entry primary school, community facilities, local retail provision, public open space, play areas and associated facilities. Right. This is the site location plan. This is an aerial photograph of the site. It's a 198 hectare site comprising predominantly agricultural land in arable and horticultural production, crossed by 3 lanes: Cold Harbour Lane, Parsonage Lane and Stickfast Lane. You have the London to Margate and Dover railway line to the south of the site. Sheppey Way to the southeast of the site, where it abuts Bobbing and Hout Green. Agricultural land to the northern, northwest and western boundaries of the site. And there is a high voltage electrical line running north-south through the site. There's a small parcel of ancient woodland indicated with my cursor here, known as Rookwood. The site lies adjacent to Bobbing Cricket Club and pitch, also used by Newington Cricket Club, which is outside of the application site. Little Norwood Caravan Club is located within the west of the site. It's up here. This is a proposals map overlay. This area in green is designated important local countryside gap. You'll note that there's part of the site lies within this gap, but that is, parcel of land is not proposed to be developed. These dotted green lines are the designated rural lanes. The northwest Sittingbourne allocated site is here, and this in green up here is the area of high landscape value. This map shows the heritage assets. You'll note that they're mostly located along Sheppey Way, with Parsonage Farmhouse lying within the site here where my cursor is. This is St Bartholomew's Church, Grade 1 listed on Sheppey Way. There's 3 site accesses to the site. The first one is the main access from Bobbing Roundabout. And then you've got 2 further vehicular accesses marked 2 and 3. And then there's a cycle and pedestrian access marked B, which runs through Parsonage Lane. This is the illustrative master plan showing the proposed development with the country park to the north of the site. This is a close-up showing the northern part of the site. Here we've got the centre of the site, and here is a close-up of the southern part of the site. This is a land use parameter plan identifying the different land uses with residential in sort of beige. Then you've got the employment in purple, and then you can see all the green open spaces and the primary school and local centre. Primary school's orange and the local centre's yellow in the centre of the site. This is the building heights parameter plan. Again, you'll note that it's generally lower densities to the periphery, with the highest density at the local centre, to the centre of the site. This is a density plan similarly showing where the higher density development will be located. Green infrastructure plan, again showing where the green spaces will be provided, identifying them. This is a movement parameter plan. The black dotted line is the main spine route through the site. This is an indicative phasing plan. The first phase being the parcel to the northeast of the site, and then the phased delivery starts at the south of the site and works its way in with phase 4, including the sports hub coming forward. So yeah, the last phases are the ones furthest to the west. And then we've got some CGIs provided by the applicant. This is the proposed primary school, indicatively indicated. CGI of the local centre. Another CGI of the local centre. This is a landscape corridor looking towards St Bartholomew's Church. This is the proposed village common. And this is the arrival from one of the arrivals on the main route from Sheppey Way, and the main entrance point. And this is another CGI on a location on the periphery of the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Very comprehensive. Thank you. Okay, we now have some visiting guests to speak in the order that I see them. Can I first call Mr. Councillor Gareth Randall, please? Good evening, Councillor. Yeah, please take the seat when you're comfortable and happy to proceed. Your 3 minutes will start as soon as you press the button. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to object to this application on behalf of Bobbin Parish Council and local residents. However, I'd also like to object on behalf of those residents of Sittingbourne and Sheppey who will also be affected by the traffic and road congestion from allowing such a huge development in this area. The photos you see don't really do justice as to how huge this is. I mean, it dwarfs the entire Meads estate. With 2,500 houses, I've seen an estimate of potentially as many as 7,000 cars. And so, you know, as a Sittingbourne resident and a frequent visitor to Sheppey, where I was actually born, I'm very concerned about the effect that the heavy traffic from this site will have on already very congested road junctions through which much of the traffic for Sittingbourne and Sheppey has to pass. I'm aware that there are demands for housing in various sites in the borough, but we need to consider the knock-on effect of traffic if it comes here. Extra traffic on the A2 and A249 will directly impact journey times to and from the centre of Sittingbourne as well as Sheppey. That means people trying to get to and from work, as well as people getting to and from schools, affecting children from the island as well as children in Sittingbourne. It's all going to have to, all of this is going to be going through that A249 roundabout and the other very, very small roads linking off. I've concerns about delays on ambulances trying to reach Medway Hospital, which of course is that direction, those junctions from Sittingbourne and from Sheppey. Queenborough, anyone returning to Sheerness from work is already getting queues or tailbacks on the A249. This large introduction of traffic potentially makes that worse. So we're also potentially at risk of more gridlock in central Sittingbourne, impacting Eurolink, lots of Sittingbourne jobs riding on that. The site has near total car dependency, and I think we need to think about which parts of our whole borough are going to be affected by this large increase in traffic in this location. I would urge members to think very carefully about how such a huge development on this site would affect their area and to not be afraid to oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Gareth. Second on the list from Iwade Parish Council, please, Councillor Steve Tolhurst. Good evening to you. Good evening. Same procedure once you're comfortable and happy to proceed in the chair. As soon as you press the button, your 3 minutes will start.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I represent the local residents who accept the need for new housing, but who strongly object to this proposal because it would permanently undermine the countryside gap and accelerate coalescence of settlements. The officer's report confirms that this land sits within an important local countryside gap. The officer's report notes that the only small parcel of land within the application boundary is formally designated as an important local countryside gap, and this specific parcel is not proposed for development. On that narrow basis, the report concludes that the scheme technically complies with Policy DM25. But Policy DM25 is clear that it is not only the mapped boundary of the gap that must be protected, but the function of the gap. This scheme fundamentally ignores the function of the gap, namely preserving coalescence, maintaining the separation of settlements and preserving the rural identity of individual villages. The wider application site forms the open countryside between Bobbing, Iwade and Newington, and the officer's own landscape assessment acknowledges that the development would urbanise this area. The proposal fails the purpose of the countryside gap policy. The local plan is clear that villages such as Iwade and Bobbing are not intended to merge, yet the massing and layout of this scheme would visually and functionally draw these settlements together. The result would be a continuous urban area, contrary to the spatial strategy of the local plan. For Iwade residents, the impacts are not theoretical. Increased traffic on Sheppey Way, the loss of tranquillity and the changing landscape character would be immediate and lasting. What is currently a rural approach to the village will become an urban corridor, placing additional pressure on infrastructure that is already struggling to meet demand. To conclude, under policies ST1, 3, 5 and 25, this committee must now decide whether Iwade remains a distinct village or becomes another suburb by default, and set a precedent for further coalescence. I respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. From East Church Parish Council, welcome please Mr. Councillor Mike Brown. Good evening, Councillor Brown.
Good evening, Chair.
Make yourself comfortable. As soon as you are ready, press the main button and your 3 minutes will start. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, I want to speak about one issue that affects every single resident, our roads, and the very real consequences this development will have. We already know the reality. The roads around Bobbing, Iwade and the wider Sittingbourne area are under severe and constant pressure. The A249, the A2 Sheppey Way, these are not resilient routes. They are already congested, already unreliable and already struggling to cope with existing demand. This is not speculation, it is lived-in experience. Planning Committee report itself acknowledges significant concerns, queuing, congestion, rat running through rural lanes and safety issues on already stressed junctions. And now we're being asked to accept up to 2,500 new homes. This is not a small increase. That is the equivalent of a new town, bringing potentially thousands of additional daily vehicle movements onto a network that is already at breaking point. And when these roads fail, and they do fail, the consequences are not just inconvenience, they are serious. They affect access to work, to education, to family life, and most critically, they affect emergency services. Ambulances, fire engines and police vehicles do not operate in theory. They operate on these same congested roads. When traffic builds up, when junctions lock up, when incidents occur, as they frequently do, those life-saving journeys are delayed. We have already heard concerns that routes such as the A2 to Medway Maritime Hospital are inadequate for ambulances and that incidents regularly cause widespread gridlock across the network. This is the current situation before this development ever happens. So the question must be asked, what happens after? What happens when thousands more cars are added to the system? What happens when a cardiac arrest call comes in or a house fire breaks out and emergency services are forced to navigate even worse congestion? Minutes matter, sometimes seconds matter. And yet this proposal offers no certainty, no guarantee that the infrastructure required will be delivered in time or that it will be sufficient to deal with the cumulative impact of development across this area. This is simply not good enough. This is not just about highways modelling or whether our impact is deemed severe on paper. This is about real people, real journeys, real risks. Because when roads fail, it is not traffic that stops, it's access. For those reasons, I urge you to fully consider the true impact of this proposal, not just in planning terms, but in human terms, and to recognise current road networks simply cannot sustain what is being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Okay. Next, we have Borden Parish Council. Councillor Lee Small, please. Good evening, Councillor. Again, please take the chair. When you're comfortable, press the button and your 3 minutes will commence.
Good evening, Chairman, officers and committee members. Borden Parish Council are objecting to this application on 3 points. Highways, the use of best and most versatile farmland and the ecology. If this application were to be approved, the A249 will face significantly increased congestion and queuing at both Grovehurst and Key Street. The transport assessment is based on incorrect cumulative assumptions and does not account for the homes already approved in Faversham. The corridor is already operating at or near capacity, and the additional traffic from the proposed new dwellings would overwhelm the upgraded junctions, slow journey times between the M2 and Sheppey, and displace vehicles onto rural lanes and village roads. The A249 would experience worse congestion, reduced network resilience, and increased safety risks. The true impact of this application has not been properly assessed. Regarding the land usage, the site is 198 hectares in size, of which nearly 70% is classed as best and most versatile farmland. The 2026 Land Use Framework identifies this as spatially sensitive land that should be protected for national food security. Using nearly 200 hectares of high-quality farmland to deliver only 2,500 homes is not a justified use of this classification of land. As a key consultee, Natural England should have properly been consulted on any habitat regulation assessment. This consultation does not seem to have taken place. The Council should not just adopt the applicant's assessment without Natural England's involvement. This alone is a procedural failure that should prevent this committee from making a decision on this application. KCC Ecology has raised serious concerns. The farmland bird mitigation strategy will not work because new open spaces will be heavily used by residents. Off-site mitigation land is not secured. Key surveys are missing or incomplete, including bat, reptile and priority bird species. And the ancient woodland at Rooks Wood faced increased predation and recreational pressure. These issues mean that the application fails the NPPF, paragraph 193. If significant harm cannot be avoided or mitigated, permission must be refused. Not only is the application not supported by a sound evidence base, it fails the NPPF, the EIA regulations, Swell's own technical guidance, and the government's National Land Use Framework. We therefore respectfully ask that you refuse permission on this application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Online, we have from Laysdown Parish Council, Councillor Gaynor Bidgood. Councillor Bidgood, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Splendid. Again, you don't need to take a comfy seat. I'm sure you've got one. But when you're ready to start, your 3 minutes will be. Thank you.
The Chair and members of the committee. I speak today as Chair of Planning, Highways and Transportation for Laysdown Parish Council. But more importantly, I speak for the families already being failed by the system you are being asked to place further strain upon. Let me be absolutely clear. We already have children on the Isle of Sheppey without school places. This year alone, around 30 children did not get a secure secondary school places. This is not a projection. That is not a future impact. that is the reality today before this development is built. And yet you are being asked to approve up to 2,500 homes, a development that can bring around 10,000 additional residents with no secondary school provision whatsoever, only a primary school. So I ask you directly, where are these children supposed to go? Because the evidence in your own report confirms what we are already experiencing. Infrastructure is already under pressure, education provision is already insufficient, healthcare services are already overstretched, and communities are already struggling to cope. This is not a question of inconvenience, this is a question of infrastructure failure. And it is compounded by sequencing. We are seeing a pattern, housing first, infrastructure later. But in reality, later often means never or far too late. Planning policy, both local and national, is clear. Development must be supported by adequate deliverable infrastructure, not promised, not assumed, delivered. Yet here there is no secondary school, no clear funded deliverable plan to provide one, and no evidence that existing schools can absorb the demand. At the same time, this committee has heard, and the report confirms concerns about GP shortages, hospital capacity, emergency access delays due to congestion, and cumulative pressure from multiple developments across Swale. This is not a sustainable growth, this is unsustainable expansion, and the consequences are not abstract, they are immediate and human. Children travelling miles for education, some as far as Canterbury and Faversham from Laysdown. Families left without access to schools, communities stretched beyond breaking point, and ultimately a decline in education standards and quality of life. Once that happens, it cannot simply be reversed. Members, you are not just deciding on a planning application. You are deciding whether to approve a development that depends on existing crisis. If this proposal cannot demonstrate that education, healthcare and infrastructure will be in place before or alongside occupation, then it fails the fundamental test of sustainable development. So I urge you, do not approve growth that outpaces the ability of our communities to function. Do not approve homes without schools. Do not approve development that sets children up to fail before they even begin their education. Because if we get this wrong, it is not policy that suffers, it is our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggood. Right, back in the room. Can I have, please, Rebecca Dufus? Good evening. You heard before, once you're comfortable and ready and your script is there, press the button and your 3 minutes will commence.
My name's Rebecca and I live on Keekole Hill in Bobbin, and I speak today to strongly object to this application. This is not a small scheme, it's huge. 2,500 homes, an estimated 10,000 new residents, approximately 20,000 increase to Sittingbourne's population, yet there is no matching infrastructure to support this massive growth. The scale of it should alarm you. This is not an extension to an existing settlement. It is effectively a new town imposed on existing communities. Keekole Hill, where I live, is an air quality poor zone. The traffic here is consistently heavy, often at a standstill. The surrounding roads are already struggling. They are simply not designed to cope with a development of this scale. The application conflicts with your own policies. It sits outside any defined built-up area. It builds upon open countryside and agricultural land. It is not a brownfield site. It destroys important countryside gaps, directly conflicting with your own policies. It consistently fails your policies on sustainability, environmental protection and infrastructure. Most importantly to me, and what I will speak about most passionately now, is the devastating impact it will have on wildlife, the nature, natural environment and landscape and the ecosystem. Many of the members here won't be familiar with the area. You are making a decision based on a boundary on a map or documents in a planning file. but for those of us who know it, who live here and walk it every day, it is a living landscape. So I'd like to paint a picture of it for all of you so that perhaps you'll get a sense of how beautiful and special the place is. The fields are alive with all types of animals, foxes, badgers, stoats I see regularly. In the evening, I see dozens and dozens of bats. Near the ancient woodland at Rook Woods, you might be lucky enough to spot an owl. I've seen barn owls, and just this morning I saw a little owl. On the lake behind the cricket pitch, we regularly see kingfishers. A kingfisher, something most people are never lucky enough to see in their lifetime. There are cormorants, egrets, ducks, geese, more hens and coots. Soon there will be chicks and ducklings. This is not an empty land waiting to be built upon. It is a thriving habitat. The developer can label a green space on the drawings that we've just seen, and they can mark out a country park on paper. But that does not mean that the wildlife that I've just mentioned will remain. Once thousands more people, cars, noise, lighting and disturbance are brought to this area, much of what makes this place so special will be gone forever. We have a responsibility to respect and protect our land. Members, this proposal is too large. It's in the wrong place with the wrong impacts. It overloads infrastructure. It places further pressure on already stretched services, and it conflicts with Swale Borough Council's planning policies. It would destroy a landscape that is not empty land, but a living place full of wildlife, beauty and tranquility. If you allow this to be lost, it is irreversible. Please, I urge you to refuse this application.
Perfect timing, thank you. And last of our visiting speakers, please, Mr. David Morris. David, welcome.
Thank you.
Take your place on the chair. As soon as you're comfortable and ready, press the button and your 3 minutes will start.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. My name is David Morris and I'm Planning and Operations Director for Catesby Estates, the joint applicant. Since the application was submitted in 2022, the proposals have been shaped through 4 years of constructive joint working between the applicant, officers and external consultees. What you see before you today is a result of that process, a logical, deliverable, high-quality development that provides lasting benefits to both new and existing residents, a proposal that is considerably less controversial than other large-scale strategic sites in the borough. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight who we are and why we are a trusted partner for the Council to deliver this site. Catesby Estates is part of Urban and Civic, the largest master developer of strategic sites such as this in the UK. Our long-term partners include Homes England, jointly investing in long-term infrastructure projects to deliver on our promises. Our business is geared towards the delivery of sites such as this. As part of a charitable foundation, all our profits are gift-aided to fund medical research. The often used narrative of greedy developer does not apply here. Turning to the scheme, in addition to much-needed housing, the site would provide a 3-form entry primary school, a local centre incorporating retail and community facilities, as well as 12 acres of employment land. The development will also deliver significant contributions towards healthcare provision, supporting local GP services with new on-site facilities, as well as significant contributions for extension to Medway Maritime Hospital. Over 50% of the site will be dedicated to green space, including a 126-acre country park and sports hub, featuring 2 all-weather pitches, indoor tennis courts, and children's play areas and community growing spaces. The creation of a sports hub with football pitches has gained significant support from a local junior football team. Swale is currently deficient in such facilities, and this new major sports facility will benefit both new and existing residents. The proposal will also provide secondary school Section 106 contributions in excess of £12 million, providing a major boost to funding and delivery of a new much-needed school. The site benefits from its proximity to recent highway improvements along the A249 corridor, totalling over £140 million. We've seen the request from Bobbing Village Hall Committee towards improvements to Village Hall. We are happy for this funding to be added to the Section 106, should members choose to do so. Unusually for a site of this size, it is only in 2 ownerships and therefore deliverable quickly. The site will contribute towards the Council's fibre supply and helps resist unwanted development elsewhere in the borough. The officer's report is very thorough and has been peer-reviewed by the Council's barrister to be a sound basis for making your decision today. I would kindly ask you to follow the recommendation and grant planning permission tonight. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you, David. Thank you. For benefit of the members of the public, we have a process where we're now going to hopefully enter into debate about the item. So to officially get into that, it needs to be proposed. I shall propose it from my position as chairman, and I hopefully will get a seconder from the committee. That allows us to debate it. So I formally move the officer recommendation, reference number 22-50-3654-EIOUT. Is that seconded? Councillor Clark, thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Chapman, you are a ward member, but you have chosen to speak as committee, correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hang on, not yet.
Sorry.
Do we have any other visiting ward members? I've got you down as a visiting member. We're all ward members, but
well,
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll call you on the list when I've got there. Okay, in that case, I have 3 visiting members that are requested to speak. I'll ask you in the order that I've got. Richard Palmer, please. Councillor Palmer.
This application should be refused because it's not plan-led development and conflicts with the development plan in multiple fundamental ways. Even the officer's own report accepts conflict with the core policies and states at paragraph 8.27.3 on page 117 that, taken as a whole, the development plan cannot be said to be complied with. That is the proper starting point. I appreciate that often you hear about the tilted balance from the MPPF and that you're given the impression that application should be approved because we don't have a 5-year supply. But that does not mean that this application should automatically be approved. The tilted balance still requires members to weigh the benefits against harms, and the weight given to those benefits depend on how real, how timely, and how deliverable they actually are. This is an outline application for a very large strategic site. There is no reserved matters for approval, no approved detailed layout, and no immediate delivery. Homes will not be built until later and approvals then secured, and the build out would take place over a long period. For that reason, the claimed housing benefits carry very little weight and would be detailed and readily deliverable scheme. The benefits are delayed and uncertain, whereas the harms identified from the many speakers, but the harms identified in the officer's report as well, are immediate and permanent. The report accepts substantial conflict with the settlement strategy at paragraphs 8.27.7 on page 118, including the conflict with policies ST1, ST3 and ST5. This remains a speculative development in an open countryside rather than a plan-led allocated site. It will lead to urban sprawl, again, contrary to the MPPF. It also accepts at paragraph 8.27.8 on page 118 that the proposal does not satisfy policy DM31 and would result in the loss of approximately 136 hectares of best and most fertile agricultural land. There is acknowledged heritage harm, including to the setting of St Bartholomew's Church and the countryside gap between Bobbing, Iwade and Newington, and again leading to urban sprawl. This is a speculative development. It should be refused. The Section 106 money does not adequately compensate for the harm that the site does, and I urge members to look at this and refuse this application, which is very speculative and not plan-led. Thank you.
Perfectly timed, Councillor Palmer. Well done. Councillor Mike Baldock, please.
I was going to stand up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to refer to the officer's update, which people has not been made public, and people have only had a very short time to read. But whilst the officer has removed the reference to Stockbury Post Office, this is not simply an error that can be removed. It reflects a complete failure to understand the application site and how the tools being used actually work. This uncertainty taints the whole report, and the whole report requires an independent assessment, not simply a removal of the error. A report that can give assurances that access to a business that does not actually exist is a report in need of proper re-examination. Even the update itself that's just been handed out has errors in it. Para 8.5.18 amended doesn't refer to highways. That's another error. He's put the wrong power in the update. So how are you supposed to have actually gone and cross-referenced this against the correct information? Further, we have details of letters sent in July 26 and responses received in August 26. Those dates haven't occurred yet. Now, okay, they might just be typos, but was it 25? Was it 2024? These are really important errors that have just been picked up on a quick look through. How much more of it is in this document? It's a really risky basis on which to give approval. There have been proper objections to some of the transport modelling. We decided as a council some while ago that in controversial applications we would get our own independent survey. This hasn't happened. The TAL, or Transport Assessment Update, includes a scenario where all traffic in the model is reduced by 10%, including traffic unrelated to the development. The TAL produces reductions in traffic at major junctions, despite the development generating over 1,500 peak hour trips. These are direct quotes from the Transport Assessment Update. This update from the officer does not address any of those flaws. It simply states that KCC and National Highways are satisfied, provides no evidence, no corrected modelling, and no explanation of how the specific errors have been resolved. There's no demonstration the updates address the flaws. This is exactly the kind of gap that makes a decision legally vulnerable. There are concerns about the environment impact assessment regulations. The officer confirms that alternatives were scoped out because the applicant has a contractual position on this site. Members, a contractual position is not a recognised reason in the EIA regulations to avoid assessing alternatives. Please either reject or defer this document until it is at least sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. Councillor Chris Palmer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to focus on what this development means in practice for roads, services and the communities already living here. The first issue is highways. Members are being asked to accept that the cumulative impact is acceptable, but that conclusion is not beyond doubt. At paragraph 8.15.60 on pages 95 to 96, the officer report reaches a positive highways conclusion. However, the professional objection submitted on behalf of the objectors disputes the cumulative modelling basis and says wider reassignment and local road impacts have not been properly assessed. This is not a minor technical disagreement. It goes to the heart of whether this development can safely be regarded as acceptable in transport terms. If members are not satisfied that the cumulative transport picture is robust, they should not grant outline planning permission and leave the consequences to be discovered later. The second issue is infrastructure. Residents already know how stretched local services are. GP access is under pressure and people are often waiting weeks for an appointment. That local reality matters when members assess whether the scale of growth is genuinely sustainable. Financial contributions are not the same as delivered infrastructure. The papers show a leisure contribution shortfall. The package still leaves serious concerns over whether education, healthcare and wider community infrastructure will be in place when needed. There is also no convincing answer to the concern that this proposal would narrow the separation between Bobbing, Iwade and Newington and permanently change the rural character of the area. This is therefore simply not a housing application. It is a proposal with disputed transport evidence, incomplete infrastructure mitigation and lasting countryside harm. When the evidence is uncertain, the infrastructure is not fully resolved and the officer report itself accepts major local plan conflict, the safer and sounder course is for refusal. Members should refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Whiting, welcome to the committee. You haven't requested to speak, but is there anything you would like to say?
If I may, Chair, and I'm very grateful to you. No, I haven't got a speech, but most of what I would have wanted to have said has been said. I wanted to just, if I can, emphasise 2 or 3 points, picking up on what other members and our visiting speakers from the parishes particularly have said. For my residents in Queenborough and Halfway, at the A249, it is the bane of their lives, and the roadworks that they've seen over the last couple of years have made that worse, and another 10 years of roadworks is not something I would wish on them. I just wanted to draw members' attention to the original Bearing Fruits local plan. We look to have a plan-led development in the borough, which is controlled and is supported by infrastructure. The inspector, when she allowed that plan, demanded that certain improvements be made to junctions on the A249, and Grampian conditions were even placed on further development until those improvements were made. Those improvements were to allow the development within Bearing Fruits, the local plan that was signed off in 2017. They didn't extend to allowing development beyond what was in that local plan. These 2,500 houses are beyond what was in that local plan. And those junctions were never designed to accept the increase. Otherwise, the inspector would have said something along those lines. She didn't. National Highways put Grampians on development to stop development until the works were done. Now, those works have been completed, albeit a year or two late, and we look forward to Growthurst being completed fully. But they don't allow for further development on top of which was envisaged in the Bearing Fruits local plan. This is in addition to that, and as has been mentioned by Councillor Palmer, this is not a plan-led development. This is a speculative development that I think will cause harm. We do not have enough school places. There are not enough school places coming forward. A new secondary school will cost in the best part of £50 million. A contribution of 12 million for a secondary school. There is no land on the existing secondary schools to expand them to take the extra children that would come. It is ill thought through, and I would hope that your members will look at the history of the local plan, look at the history of what Swale has tried to do in balancing development across the borough over the years, and reject this particular application. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whiting. Members, it has been recommended for approval and seconded. Online, we have Alan Millard from KCC Highways. Alan, can you hear us, and have you heard the discussion so far?
Yes, Chairman, I've heard the discussion so far, so yes, I'm online.
Fantastic. Don't go anywhere, Alan, please. Right. Firstly, I'd like to say a big thank you to the visiting parish councils this evening. Certainly in my experience, it's quite unprecedented to see 6 councils represented here this evening. So thank you very much indeed. Right. Members. Councillor Thompson.
Just a quick question. I wondered what the percentage format is, before I carry on, for social housing, and what the percentage numbers are being delivered now before we agree any more housing. It's a bit like the Duchy, there might be 30%, blah, blah, blah. What was the number we needed before we started to give planning? And as planning's given for housing, are we ever going to catch up with that number, or is it exponentially expanding? I'd just like to know that.
So you're asking what the policy requirement is, or
Yeah, under the definition of the population we currently have for Swale.
well, I mean the policy requirement in this area, as set out in the report, is for 40% social housing, and we would seek 90% social rent and 10% intermediate shared ownership.
Okay. And sorry, Chair. And as that's not detailed, we wouldn't know what any of that would be. Is it detailed?
It should be.
Yeah.
Whilst we find that, Councillor MacDonald, you'll be next. Thank you.
Isn't this, sorry, paragraph 8, do you want the paragraph reference number? It's 8.17.14 for the section 106.
Through you, Chairman, the affordable, we've moved. The Section 106 agreement would secure the provision of 35% affordable housing comprising 60% social, affordable, rented and 40% shared intermediate housing.
And if I could just draw your attention, the paragraph 6.10, the comments from the accommodation resettlement manager confirms the tenure split. And then there's some commentary on the requirement of section 8.6, where it discusses whether the area falls within the 40% or the 10% area, and concludes that it lies within the area where 40% is required.
Happy?
Yep, that was that section, and I just wondered, with that, do we have agreed providers for that? Only that we don't want the same failing in Faversham where it didn't happen and then they became private houses.
I don't know if at this stage, I'm not aware that RP is on board. But we are on the outline stage, and so it wouldn't necessarily be the case that an RP would be involved at this stage. But I understand that the developer does work with RPs, but I'm not aware of one on board at this point.
I think that's more likely to come up at detail should it get to that stage.
Thanks, Jay. I've got some other bits if that's
Yeah,
all right.
carry on. I'll do one round of questions first.
Oh, lovely.
We'll come
Okay.
back, similar as we did previously.
And I just bringing up again about best and most versatile, that's a particularly good site for farming and growing. Obviously, it's just been cereals at the moment, so I'd like to bring that point to highlight. And the fact there is no mitigation, you cannot mitigate, you cannot find any other BMV. So I think we need to be really cautious. We've given the Duchy section away already. And we look at that, it was within a motorway. On this particular section here, we're looking at expanding away from an urban environment, not towards a particularly built up area. So the Duchy again was around a road, not that I agree with it, but this will be expanding away from that into the rural environment. I agree with the speakers around the fact that it would coalesce and then it would bring in Key Cole, Key Street. They would lose their identity and spirit of place. It would just overwhelm them. And then fragmentation would occur, whereas we want to look at defragmentation of the countryside. And as we know that those particular bringing in of new growth and new sort of green spaces doesn't help long term for wildlife, especially when you've got a lot of human activity. But one of the key areas for me would be public transport. It currently sits at 3 kilometres from the train station. There's a small one to the Isle of Sheppey, but it wouldn't be the main basis. So under that, we all know that people won't cycle or walk over a mile. So the Duchy, again, sat within that criteria at 0.8, but this is a long way from that. So it means we're going to be imposing habit behaviour of getting in the car and driving, and that is not sustainable development. So I think that's a massive factor with the best and most versatile land going. We're going to be needing it soon, and we're just giving it away. We need to be responsible for it as well. and take our responsibility for looking after that grade one. We have quite a lot of it, which makes it harder. We have to have smaller pockets of development, but not large urban sprawls that take away from that. And we must look at sustainable build around transport, and this definitely doesn't cover that because it will reinforce people to use the car. They're my main points. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor McNaught, before we move to you, just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to call a 6-minute adjournment for personal reasons. 6 minutes. Will return at 17 minutes past, please. Thank you. Is that Councillor Marchington? No, it's not. Where is Councillor Marchington? Where's everybody else?
In the loo.
They're in the loo.
Oh, we'd lost the councillors.
Yeah. One. We got two left, I think. Yeah. One left. Well done. Right, members, thank you. Councillor MacDonald, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I've got a Master of Science degree in transport, and a lot of experience, so I'm actually quite interested. I'd like to say that having read through all the papers, I think the walking and cycling is going to be pretty optimistic, frankly, the forecasts. But there we go. With regard to vehicle movements, we've got to consider the fact that I don't know whether you can pop the plan up at all. Can you? That one? Because I'd like members to realise that...
which one are you after, Councillor MacDonald?
That one.
That one.
Good enough.
Yeah.
No, not that one. It needs to be a... Yeah, that's good enough. Oh, yes.
That's it?
Yeah, it doesn't show... Yes, it does. It shows a bit of it. But to the east of that site, on the other side of the main Sheppey Road, there is a site which I understand has got, or almost got, planning on under the existing plan for 1,500 houses. So you have to consider that with regard to transport. So 1,500 plus 2,500 is 4,000 new properties, which will be a considerable pressure on the roads.
Councillor MacDonald,
yeah,
we are here to look at the application before us, not any other applications.
I do understand, but you must take that into consideration. So I was pointing out to members that there is a site adjacent to it. That's, but yeah, that's fair enough. You're the boss. Anyway, my own view is that there could be, I calculated there was 8,000 vehicle movements, or 8,000 vehicles through all the properties. So, and I understand, well, we heard earlier that there was a suggestion that it was 7,000, which is fair enough. But I think the congestion is going to be absolutely appalling, quite frankly. And I've based that on what I've actually read. And I don't think the transport plan, quite frankly, is adequate. So that's my own view at the moment. So I think it's a huge development in an area that there are other reasons why people have suggested it's unsatisfactory. My own view is that it's far too large, quite frankly, and even if you looked at a bit of a site, but we don't because we've got a big application. So I think the congestion from there is going to be absolutely appalling. Thank you very much.
Do you have a question?
No.
You don't? Okay. Members, moving forward, just at this stage, just questions, please. No worries. Councillor Chapman and then Councillor Cheeseman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to everything tonight, taking everything on board, my concern is obviously what's been said before, the impact on transport. I think when residents on this proposed development want to go into town, do shopping and so forth, it's just going to be gridlocked, and it's going to be a permanent gridlock. These homes are going to take about 20 to 25 years to build. There will be people moving in as it goes along, but I think if people have had a lot of traffic because of Grovehurst and Key Street, they haven't seen nothing yet, because I really think this is going to have an impact. Also, no one's mentioned that we are, in fact, the Garden of England, and I think we're going to end up being the allotment of England if this building carries on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Cheeseman, please.
Thank you, Chair. What concerns me is on page 29, 6.19. It mentions about the gas pipeline, which is a major hazard, and that it goes through is it the middle and outer zones part of it is. But it says it's okay because there's only 100 people would be in the middle zone and 1,000 on the outer zones. And also 6.20 mentions an explosive site. So I don't know what's that referring to, or where is it? But how old is the pipeline? I mean, is it going to need work on it in the future? And it says a major hazard, so you can you show it on the map where that is, the pipeline? Thank you.
I don't have the exact location of the pipeline.
Do we know where the explosive site is, Simon?
I think. Well,
Are we able to show it or
some
not?
distance from the site, but I'd have to have a quick look into that.
Okay. Whilst you're digging those out,
I think the gas line, because it runs through the sports hub. So, but I'm not sure exactly which direction. I think Ian's having a. Yeah.
Okay, we'll find that. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions to start with, and then I'd like to come back in the second round with some comments, if I may. But firstly, I must reiterate that even though I seconded the proposal, that is not indicative of the way I will vote on the application. So the first one, which section of Parsonage Lane is being downgraded to a footway and cycleway? Is it the A249 end or the more rural road? And secondly, I refer to the KCC Highway 6.2, but on page 25. How was this modelling done for this framework travel plan? Because as anyone who uses the junctions mentioned, i.e. Staplehurst, Chalkwell, St Paul's, Crown Road, St Paul's Millway, etc., between sort of 7:30 in the morning and 9 o'clock or thereabouts, it's absolute gridlock. Again, between sort of 3:30 and 6:30 in the evening. And as for Saturdays, forget about the north side of the A2 around those junctions. So how was this modelling done and who did it? Because it seems to me that this has just been done on a computer model rather than actual physical can't think of the word I'm looking for now, but actual physical data.
Feet on the ground. Simon, have you got the answers to Councillor Cheeseman?
Yes, Chair. On this plan here, you should be able to see a part of Parsonage Lane indicated in orange. That is the section of Parsonage Lane which will be for cyclists and pedestrians.
Can you zoom in on that particular area, please?
I'm sorry. Not sure how to.
Control button done. Try that.
Right.
Zoom in, roll in.
Okay, yeah. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, I still can't make out. Is that the more rural end of the of Parsonage Lane? Because you've got Parsonage Farmhouse shown there, but it doesn't show how far that pedestrian and cycle access goes. So I presume it's from the more rural end rather than the A249, the old A249. Sorry.
So it's, I mean, the more rural end, I assume you mean the western part. So it is the bit that's closest to Sheppey Way, closer to the urban area.
Okay. And the questions from Councillor Cheeseman, please.
I'll share my screen in a second. Thank you, Chairman. So this light yellow that follows it's probably easier to spot the brown line that runs through the site. If you can follow me mouse, which is hard to see. Yeah, right. Yeah. So that brown line that runs sort of east-west through, wiggles around on that plan. With you can just about make out a yellow sort of hue to the side of it. That's the route of the pipeline. That's the gas main.
And the explosives?
I'll work on that one.
Yep. While we're waiting, Councillor Bonney, please.
Right, thank you. Okay, let's start. I've got a few questions, as you know, it's just par for the course. Right. There is listed in the early section of the report a number of other adjacent applications, including one that includes a secondary school, which there was a resolution to grant in 2021. However, we've not granted. Is that correct? Because the Section 106 is not complete.
That's correct. The Section 106 negotiations are still ongoing. There's a few outstanding matters that haven't been resolved yet, so that's correct.
So why I ask is clearly what is being asked for here is contributions in this scheme for a secondary school, and other schemes across Sittingbourne and Sheppey have, shall we say, no, the wider population has suffered as a result of the non-delivery of a school at that site. It's caused absolute chaos within the secondary education provision for Sittingbourne and Sheppey. So I wanted to have an understanding, and I think the committee needs to have some visibility into when that is likely, if ever, to complete, because we are now 5 years on from a resolution to grant with no completion of Section 106, which means we can't be certain as a committee where the secondary provision will be for the children that will be living on this estate if this is granted.
My understanding, and I think this is set out in the report, is that if the secondary school isn't to be brought forward on that site, then the monies will be used to purchase another site and build out a secondary school. But I'm not aware of the location of that, I'm afraid, at this stage. I'm not sure whether a location has been identified by Kent County Council Education.
Okay, right. Then that leads me on to something else. I've read the response from Southern Water. And unfortunately, because I spent a lot of time in a public inquiry last year for Highstead Park, I have quite a good understanding of water supply in Swale and where it resides. So my understanding, although it's not written in any document, I don't believe here, is that the supply for this site would come from Keekole. And in Southern Water's letter, they say that they would need at least 24 months. They need to see the phasing plans, and that in order to put in any water provision, they would need at least 24 months. If it's complex, you can add another 24 months to it. So if it's complicated, that means 4 years. Now, we've got under section 410, the indicative delivery plan, which states that it'll be a 15-year period and there'll be 60 homes in 27 and 28, and 120 homes in 28, 29, and 160 in 29, 30, followed by the caveat afterwards that this was submitted in January 25 and it'd be pushed back 9 months. However, residents will know locally at Keycoll there's pressure issues because there's not enough supply, and that actually Southern Water's solution, and I do believe they've got officers, so anyone who wants to FOI it can, working on a new borehole which will take years to come forwards. So what I'm concerned about is the sustainability of water supply for 2,500 houses in the locality here. They cannot spur off the main that runs from Cromer's Wood, which is in just next to the Highstead Park application, that feeds the Isle of Sheppey water supply. So they can't run off the spur for that. What happened a few weeks ago is that Stockbury and around my ward in Bredgar lost water supply because of the issues South East Water are having. I'm aware that in Merston there's low water pressure there, and that is because Southern Water were taking water out of the system to supply South East Water. So what it means is they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but there is not enough water. And they were handing out bottled water in my villages in anticipation a couple of weeks ago of further cuts. This is Southern. So I think as a committee, we need to have a very good understanding of what Southern can actually deliver in the time frame, because what we've been told tonight is it's fine, this will contribute to our 5-year supply. But if we start looking into the technicality of what actually can be delivered, and that's just on the supply side, what I'm also concerned about is there's no commentary in here about the wastewater treatment plant. And Sittingbourne's wastewater treatment plant, if you go on the Surfers Against Sewage app, you'll see how many releases there were this year alone where Southern Water had to release into the Ramsar and into the protected site. This will only add to that problem. Now, it will have to upgrade the system, the water treatment works in Sittingbourne. And again, this is a major piece of infrastructure. And leading on from what one of the other councillors said tonight is that this is not in the local plan. The water companies will not say no because they're not a statutory consultee and planning application. So let's get that straight. But what concerns me is this will not be in their investment plan going forwards. This is a massive bit of infrastructure down Gas Road, and that could lead to delay. What we know with all the major sites in Swale so far, so Homes England is a really good case in point. It's 20 years they've been in ownership that's not delivered on site. We've got this other one where we can't close out Section 106 where a secondary school is supposed to delivered, and it's had a fundamental impact on secondary school education in Sittingbourne and Sheppey. That has not delivered because they can't even close out Section 106 discussions. We've got major sites that are being held up, but are holding up our infrastructure. If we agreed to this tonight, we are reliant on other infrastructure that I don't think and I don't feel assured is going to be delivered here. So my question is, what assurance can we have on water supply that it is a sustainable water supply for this development?
Thank you, Councillor Bonnet. Simon.
I can't speak for Southern Water and their plans to deliver the water supply for this development and to for other needs within the locality, but that they have a statutory duty to provide the water supply, and that they won't allow a given number of dwellings to be occupied if that water supply can't be provided. So there are safeguards, but in terms of what the specific plans would be in terms of delivery of the infrastructure and where the water would be sourced from, I'm afraid I don't have that information to hand.
Thank you. If I can come back, because I think this is so critical. This is so critical that we could not be in a position to say that this should proceed if we cannot have some assurance that what is the point of us granting a planning permission if there is no chance in it actually contributing towards our 5-year supply, because that cannot be delivered in that time frame.
Just hang on there one moment, Councillor Bonney. Russell, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. It's not for the planning system to fix failures of statutory undertakers. We're not there to fix those. They've got to submit a planning application if they want to build if they want to extend the size of their water supply. That's not what we're here for. We're not here to fix up the infrastructure that these guys are supposed to deliver due to their own under-delivery or their own failures.
Thank you. And I understand that and I hear that. However, our duty here is to understand, is this application reasonable and can it be delivered in the time frame that's been given? And what I feel from what I've seen and what I've read and what I've experienced elsewhere is that isn't a possibility. So that's those bits. So onto the ancient woodland, for which we have a legal responsibility, a statutory undertaking to preserve ancient woodland. Can you tell me what permissive paths there are in the ancient woodland? Are there any?
I'm not aware of any permissive paths within the ancient woodland.
Okay, right. I asked this because this came up in the Highstead Park inquiry too, because that affected ancient woodland. And we had Kent Ecology Services on the stand, and that came up because there was public access to that woodland. I drove today very carefully around the sites, went to Stickfast Lane and all round, and I stopped by the ancient woodland. There aren't any signs telling you not to go in. And in fact, it does look like there's a permissive path in there, a well-trodden one. And the reason I ask this, because in the report it says that basically we're going to surround it by blackthorn and make it so you can't go into it. Well, one side of that is actually a rural lane. So unless you're going to plant across the road or block up the road, that's going to be fairly tricky to achieve. And I am concerned that the ecologist has not been on site. We know they don't go out on site. She admitted that in the inquiry last year. And I've read her evidence. And there's nothing in there about permissive paths. She doesn't understand that I suspect there is probably people accessing it from what I've seen on site. Now, we are saying that we're going to keep people out of this with the provision of this application and put conditions in. But that's going to be fairly tricky to achieve, I think, from what's drafted.
You done?
Yeah, no, I'm not, sorry. Right, then the other one that I'm concerned about is what consideration has there been about the view from the top of St Bartholomew's Church? It's a Grade 1 listed asset. Have you been up the church tower? Has anyone been up the church tower?
If I could just comment that wouldn't be a public view that we would sort of seek to protect. It wouldn't sort of form part of the setting or the historic or the heritage significance of the tower, of the heritage asset of the church.
There is case law that says it doesn't have to be open and publicly accessible for it to be a protected view from the top of a church. You are aware of that, are you?
Well, it wasn't something that's been identified by our heritage consultant or the heritage, the person who wrote the heritage assessment, which accompanied the application.
Okay, because again, this is a repetitive point, but I pretty much dragged everybody up the church tower, I think, last year. It was a bit of a standing joke. But there was, and if you look, that is a significant heritage asset in that landscape. And if you have a view from a Grade 1 listed asset, then I do understand that there is some protection afforded to that view and from that view.
You've made the point. Thank you. Councillor Clark, you want to come back very briefly on your point?
Yeah, just briefly, Chairman. I didn't get an answer to my question about the traffic modelling.
Mr. Millard, this one falls directly in your bailiwick, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The traffic modelling was done using software, as you alluded to, Councillor Clark. It is through a combination of different software programs that predict the operation of different types of junctions under different scenarios. So it was a combination of what's known as Junction 9, Arcady and Piccadilly that looked at the corridor through there. And what that looks at was the difference between the scenario with and without the development to look at the difference in performance in that measure. And what that has shown was where there were minimal immaterial differences, it's not something we can object to on the MPPF grounds, and other ones where there were differences where there would be mitigation that's proposed and would be completed.
Councillor Clark, that was pretty clear.
As clear as mud, Mr. Chairman. I am somewhat staggered that KCC Highways have raised no objections on a computer model rather than actually taking physical numbers at those junctions. It states in the report that those junctions are already near to or over capacity. So why have KCC Highways not raised any objections to the amount of traffic that this site is going to put onto those junctions?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Alan, just for to make it very clear to us all, other than the current roadworks that are happening at Grovehurst, are you aware of either yourself or any of your colleagues visiting the application site as we see it today?
We do visit the site, but I think the point that Councillor Clark's making about the traffic numbers is they are recorded from surveys. So that's what feeds into it at the beginning of the process to inform the model. So it's not that there hasn't been any physical surveys to undertake what the number of vehicles are that are going through there, and then the model builds on that to predict what extra vehicle movements would go through there based on what growth there is in the local plan and committee development and such forth. But in terms of other highway works that are taking place, yeah, we've spoken about Key Street roundabout and Grovehurst roundabout. They're still under construction at the moment, or not fully completed. So I know that the traffic lights have recently been switched on in the last few days on Grovehurst Road on the roundabout there, but that's still limited down to single file traffic around there because of the codes. So we're not seeing that operating as it would do under the completed scheme. The same thing with Key Street, but with other improvements we've highlighted, and National Highways have also highlighted the improvements required at Bobbin roundabout as well, at the A24 interchange there. So that those are works that are also tied in with secured through planning conditions and obligations.
Thank you, Alan. Your answers are noted. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm still having trouble with this. I understand that there have been surveys done, but on what days and at what time of those days were these surveys done? Because it seems clear to me that they weren't actually done at peak times. They must have been done on a Sunday morning at 6 o'clock.
Councillor Clark, obviously highways have set procedures and processes for doing their survey work. I understand what you're saying. I don't think we're here tonight to challenge which day and what time the surveys were undertaken. The survey is, as we have to understand it, the KCC Highway Survey. Yeah, it may not, but you may not be ticking that box, but that's where we are. Right, Councillor Speed, please.
Thank you, Chairman. On acute health care, at paragraph 8.17.9, it says the applicant has agreed to the requested financial contribution towards acute care, which the NHS has identified as being absolutely essential, but on the basis that the obligation is removed, should case law identify that the request does not meet Regulation 122 of the SIL regs. Now, I raise the same point in connection with the Duchy application, because here, as there, delegated authority is sought by officers to remove that obligation if, prior to completing the Section 106, the Secretary of State determines it doesn't meet those SIL tests in respect of Highstead Park, which would then impact on the Duchy and this application. And indeed, if the Section 106 here is completed before the Minister reaches his decision on Highstead, then there's a blue pencil clause to be inserted which allows for removal of the acute healthcare contribution if the Secretary of State concludes it doesn't meet those tests. So if elements of that contribution, or indeed all of it, are not found to meet Regulation 122, what mechanisms are in place to ensure that the healthcare needs are still addressed, and in that scenario, would the development still be considered acceptable in planning terms? I've got a couple of other points, but could maybe the officer respond on that one?
Yeah, reel your other two off as well, please.
Okay, thank you. On the question of water supply, Councillor Bonnie's covered that pretty comprehensively, actually, but on condition 63, it's stated that there'll be a water consumption standard of maximum 110 litres per person per day. How will that consumption standard be monitored in practice, and what enforcement powers would the council have if it's not met? And then allied to that, on sewerage capacity, looking at condition 52, if Southern Water ultimately confirm that there is insufficient capacity, and we've seen that with other developments such as Frognall Place in Tenham, is there a mechanism within the conditions to prevent occupation until those upgrades are delivered, and could that effectively act as a Grampian style restriction?
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Simon, please.
In relation to the acute healthcare, the debate around this issue is that it's been argued that this is for central government to fund, not developers, and acute healthcare is paid for in some cases through central government allocation of funds. This hasn't been provided to the NHS Trust in this case, and so they are seeking it through new development. But there's a bit of a I think it's a more of a central government issue that hasn't been resolved and may be resolved through the Highstead decision as to whether it's appropriate to seek the contributions from housing developers. But it's a court issue that's been considered to some degree in the courts, but hasn't been resolved, and that's why the position has been taken on this and Highstead and Duchy, because it's a point that needs resolving. But if it's not secured for this, then my understanding is that it would be a central government requirement to provide that funding. The second question around the water consumption, obviously it's not a condition that requires the submission and approval of details, so it's sort of in effect the developer self-policing here. But there are measures that would be expected. Building regs as well have measures to control the flow of showers and taps and what have you. But there isn't the enforcement. There would be enforcement powers if it came to light that they hadn't implemented sufficient measures to moderate water consumption. Obviously, you can't control how long someone spends in a shower, but there are means of reducing water consumption. But it could be enforced against, but the condition as worded doesn't require the submission and approval of details. And the question around the foul sewage, I was just looking at the Southern Water comments, so they did address sewage. If you just bear with me a second. Ian's got.
Through you, Chairman. So in terms of sticking with the water consumption rate, the effect of that condition is that it requires the building regs to achieve a higher standard, and it's policed through the building regulations, and then doesn't need to police any further, because once it's in place, that's the end of the story. It wouldn't be signed off without it. In terms of the foul water drainage condition, the effect of that condition means that they have to have a strategy in place prior to the commencement of any phase of development for how foul water drainage would be dealt with and then implemented in accordance with that strategy. So that would provide the reassurance that foul drainage would be in place. And if I could answer Councillor Cheeseman's question, it's Funton Works is the explosive site, and it's the catchment area, wrong word, safeguarding zone from that, which just about reaches the northwest corner of the site. So that's what's been referred to.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, if I could just come back on the healthcare point. I mean, I'm aware that this is something we're awaiting a ruling on, so we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But my concern is that if it's determined that it's not down to developers to provide this funding, how confident can we be that central government will provide it instead? And might we end up without this funding, both for the Duchy and for this one, if it's approved, and then we would have a serious problem with acute healthcare in this borough?
Through you, Chairman, I mean, your comments aren't lost on us, and that's why we've sort of taken the stance that we have in relation to the Highstead inquiry and in these cases to support the NHS to seek it, whilst we're all of the view that it is necessary and meets the SIL requirements. But if it's proven not to meet the SIL requirements, it'd be on the basis that it's not necessary to make development acceptable in the planning perspective. It might be in other ways, but not in the planning arena. And from that basis, you're quite right. It might be. It wouldn't be from me or this council to determine where the money would come from. That's, as Simon said, it is central government and out of our realm.
Yeah, I would say that the Swale crystal ball, very similar to the other 14 to 13 districts in Kent, is equally cloudy on that matter. But it's a good point, well made. Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks, Chair. We are told that it's only outline and we haven't got the details or the layout, etc. However, we have got in there all the parameter plans that have come forward with the application. We've got the master plans that have been put through. And even on condition 12, it states there that on the reserved matter details, the parameter plans will be approved as part of this application tonight. So whilst we haven't got detail, would be approving, if approved, the layout basically through the parameter of what's been submitted. So can the officer just sort of give a little bit of an explanation on how that layout would work with those plans? Because if we do approve this tonight, how much flexibility is there with that layout? Because in my experience, once we approve things with master plans, that is what we always go back to when those reserve matters come in. Because I don't think it's a case of just don't worry about the detail at this stage. I think we do need to be looking at that.
Give us some more. We get to the answer of that.
The second question is, it mentions in the report about the community hub, doesn't mention what the community hub actually is. I think we need some clarification on that. In the update that was sent out today, we've had an extra objection from Bobbin Village Hall. They are requesting Section 106 obligations for the Village Hall. The impact of this development on the Village Hall that's already existing is obviously going to have more use, and I think a Section 106 request would be relevant. But without knowing exactly what this community buildings, etc., are going to be, we don't know where we can be asking for that or not. So just another clarification on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Simon, in your own time, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the parameter plans, I mean, this, for example, is the land use parameter plan, and that is binding. And as far as those areas identified for those specific identified land uses are where we would expect those land uses to be located, that would bind those areas to those uses. The building heights, similarly, that is a control document that would ensure that the heights of buildings were as indicated on that plan. The densities, similarly, we wouldn't expect densities falling outside of those identified in those areas. I mean, this is a green infrastructure plan, again, indicates the locations of the different types of green infrastructure. Obviously, they can come back and vary these plans for a non-material amendment or a Section 73 minor material amendment, but at this stage, we're approving development in accordance with these plans, which would bind we could bind the developer to at a reserve matters stage when the detailed reserve matters schemes come forward. Does that answer that question sufficiently?
It does. I'll come back in a minute, Chair, if that's all right, with something on that.
Okay. The community facility, I mean, at the moment, it's identified for 650 square metres, which could be used under use class ED, indoor sport, recreation or fitness, or F2B, halls or meeting places for the principal use of the local community. So the developer hasn't decided exactly how that will be used at this stage, but it does provide the opportunity for a sort of traditional community facility, sort of hall, village hall sort of thing. But again, it could come forward as something else. So I note your point around Bobbin Village Hall.
Thanks, Jeff. I can come back. Just on the parameter plans, I think that was useful because I think the committee do need to really consider that, because when we are told, yeah, this is outline and really need, it is, but there's things that we would be agreeing that have an impact. And there is something that I would raise, that you had that point there with the density plan. And that is a concern that I have, because what no one's mentioned, and I tend to frequent quite a bit, is the crematorium. You've got a tranquil, peaceful space in the countryside, and you're saying that basically we would surround it by non-residential use, sports pitches, and the noise that would generate from that part of the development has had no consideration whatsoever, because we haven't got the details to come forward as we do in a reserve application. But we're being asked to approve this and sticking that there because it's in the parameter plan. So those things do need consideration. And as the speaker for the developer said, we've had 4 years of constructive discussions on there, 4 years, and they've come up with something like this, which is just a bit of a joke. There's more that I will say, but those are the questions that I had for now.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I tend to agree. I think looking at the plans that we've seen, in my opinion, they are quite specific, even at this stage. Quite specific. And, yeah, potentially binding. Right. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. On a not dissimilar theme to some other questions about the 5-year land supply, which obviously is the kind of the real Achilles heel that is part of why this is recommended for approval, and some of the other things we've had before that we may not have loved but have had to, is do we have a kind of rough expected time frame for when we will have some reserved matters applications for presumably phase 1 first, but I guess the others as well, if to flow from that, so we can have a little bit more confidence that this might help if this was to pass this evening. Thank you.
I mean, typically around 18 months, 2 years for a reserve matters application to come in and be approved. Is that reasonable?
How long's a piece of string, isn't it? We don't know what matters are going to happen next week, let alone 18 months' time. Simon, on that first round, have you got all your answers and you've given all your answers? You're happy? Councillor Hunt, you're happy with your... Yep, cool. Right, members, anybody else want to have a nab? Councillor Bonney.
So the reserve matters, you think, would be about 18 to 24 months?
I mean, I can't speak for the developer, but
no,
typically
that's normal.
That I mean, it might be sooner because they'll come forward with the reserve matters for phase 1, which is a relatively small part of the site, just housing. So it might be quicker, but I can only speculate as to what the developer has to do following any grant of outline permission, getting contractors on board, any constraints that need addressing. There's a lot of variables, but there's a phasing plan. I think I've indicated within the report that housing could be expected to be commence delivery at around year 3, and there identified a certain number of houses being delivered, within years 3 to 5. So but that is indicative at this stage, so we can't really place much weight on it.
I think that's quite useful. You can't place much weight on it. So from a sort of general land use point of view, that shaded in that sort of medium density, that development of housing and that top corner of the red line boundary. It's quite detached from the rest of the development. How does that connect into the main development?
There's a pedestrian route through the country park, so for cyclists and pedestrians. But I'll go back to the landscape master plan. You can see there there's some pedestrian route, but there isn't a vehicular route linking that parcel with the remainder of the site. And vehicles would need to travel onto Sheppey Way and then use the next vehicular access along, which is here.
Sorry, say that bit again.
I've got the site. So that's the vehicular access for the northeast parcel,
Yep.
and you need to drive down to this vehicular access here. Would be the nearest way to get into the site and to access the village centre, the local centre by car.
So, I mean, this seems really a development of, a satellite, effectively, that doesn't really seem to tie in to the main development where, you're going to put a centre where there'll be, and the school and the sports facilities. I'm just thinking, if you want to do that in the evening, are you really going to walk through a country park at night? Is it going to be lit? Probably not. Are you going to walk along the main road? I don't know. It doesn't sort of tie itself into what you've got a church, you've got the main road there where the centre of the village is, and the current village hall. You've got a linear development. This seems to be a self-contained major development down here with the satellites stuck on at the top there. So I think from a land use perspective, I don't feel this achieves what it should, because how many houses are we talking about in that top part there? Is that 360? No, it's got to be more than that. That's because it's quite a chunk of housing that doesn't really have its own.
It says 360 dwellings.
That's bigger than. You're creating another a development that wouldn't necessarily have its own facilities. It's reliant on that without decent connectivity. And the other thing was, when we talked about traffic modelling, maybe traffic modelling has assumed that people are going to the secondary school on the other site where we haven't quite agreed the section 106. Is that correct? And presumably, it can't account for if that school's not delivered and the kids have to go elsewhere, because that obviously unwinds all the traffic modelling.
I'm not sure how far the traffic modelling considers the location of secondary schools, particularly given that the location hasn't been established yet. So,
Alan, do you want to come in here?
Well, the modelling wouldn't have assumed that there was a secondary school on the site, so it would have accepted that it was beyond the site extent.
Sorry, traffic modelling goes outside of the site, and the school is off-site, secondary school. So what have you figured for parents doing, school runs, either by foot, by bicycle or by car? Because that's quite a big factor. It's quite a few people going to secondary school every day.
Yeah, so the traffic modelling would assume that the vehicles that are generated by the site are going off-site, so then it distributes onto the highway network. So there isn't any internalisation with the site for the secondary school movement. So the modelling would assume that it's gone off-site.
That's as clear as mud to me, because what that means is that we may or may not have a school on that other site, and we may or may not have traffic going to it. I don't know where that's modelled anywhere, because you're going to have quite a large inflow and outflow of traffic to that school elsewhere, which will have a knock-on impact on this area. No answer.
There's your answer. Okay. Are you done, Councillor Body?
For the moment, thank you.
For the moment. What else have you got?
Well, it was really about walking to, I mean, we're talking about sustainable communities, and the idea is that you should be able to walk to school in a real world scenario. So I think my concern is, obviously I've raised about we may or may not have a school nearby. Then it begs the question of where they're going and how they're going to get to school. So that's an issue. And obviously, I think the others have talked about best, most versatile land. The other concern I've got is around the baseline data for ecology, because it seems to me we're starting off on a sticky wicket with not having the data here now. So it's going to be difficult if we haven't got the baseline data straight now. How then in the future, when it comes to monitoring any increase or that we're complying, how that happens? Could I have an explanation on that?
Simon, please.
We have received a BNG baseline, which will be used to assess the uplift that will be secured through the BNG legislation. So I've got a spreadsheet that's been agreed by the KCC. A lot of the biodiversity is within the hedgerows on the site, but I have got a baseline which will be used.
Okay, because there's things in there about, things like badgers, and we haven't got any specific mitigation. It's a condition that it will be dealt with. I don't know where those badger sets are. You've seen them. I know it's confidential data. But I don't know what the mitigation's going to be. We know that presumably, are they in an area where there's housing proposed? Do we know? And this goes back to something that happened in my ward, where there was a badger set, a main set, and it got moved. An artificial one got put in. The developer spent a lot of money. It never got used. And it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Slow worms moved in. I suppose that's a bonus. But it didn't achieve what it was supposed to. And the other one that concerns me is around skylarks. We've had problems enforcing skylark mitigation elsewhere. How can we achieve that in this report where we haven't yet secured? Have we secured the mitigation land? And how can we enforce the conditions on it? I mean, again, Stones Farm, Countryside Park, last year, mid-inquiry about to give ecology evidence, and Hyde Homes contractor mowed over the top of the skylarks, nesting skylarks. They were told by a councillor not to do it, and the contractors went ahead and did it. So what we can say is we can put the conditions in, but what I need to know is how can we ask the locals to help us enforce those, to make sure that they stick and they work. Because again, Wise's Lane, that one didn't work, and I think the officers are aware of the issues there, of how we make that work.
Well, I mean, paragraph 8.17.17 indicates that the skylark mitigation plots will be secured through the Section 106 agreement on land within the applicant's control. So the landowner of the site owns other fields within the locality, so it would be secured through the 106 agreement, and as part of that we could secure ongoing monitoring through the drafting of the 106, so that there would be that control, and we could draft triggers as well to ensure that it's provided at a certain point. The detail of the 106 wording.
So on that, so the section 106, obviously we've got commentary here as to what will go in it. I will say again what I said last time is we absolutely need to see the document, section 106. It's critical. I mean, Highstead Park, only 3 weeks ago, the inspector picked up on mistakes that were made in the drafting of that. And, you know, we've now more than a year on, 4 years into that application. And we can see what's happened with the secondary school is this drags on. If it comes to committee with a section 106 document, we don't have this protracted 5-year wait for it to be signed off and issued as a permission. This cannot keep going on. This committee must see that document. And I hear what you say is you could put the land in there. But how do I know that the land for mitigation of skylarks is not surrounded by badger sets, which was a case in Highstead Park? So you're giving them an enormous feeding platter. So I can't interrogate this mitigation that's proposed. It's only words in here. We're delegating it. Now, I would suggest that if this is approved tonight, that actually the final section 106 document must come back to committee because the devil is in the detail. But things like that mitigation are extremely important. That's the offset. If it doesn't work, so Highstead Park, we were told that, for example, that, you know, we'd have skylark mitigation on a particular site. It turns out it was an orchard. Well, they don't nest in orchards. They nest on flat arable land. So I think we need to be assured that those mitigation measures are properly assessed, that other alternative land. So they will need to have their own surveys, and that it's appropriate and it's nearby. We don't want the other case, Borden, where we were told that mitigation would be 6 miles away in Faversham.
You've made your point
Okay,
amply,
thank you.
Councillor Bonney. Councillor Harrison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of points. Firstly, I don't like outline applications of this size because there are so many things that you need to try and nail down. As I mentioned at that one I subbed at quite recently. Oh no, Councillor, you should have got that agreed at the outline stage. It's much too late now when it's coming in for detail. And unfortunately, you know, you cannot expect members to sit here for like 48 hours at a go just to make sure that the stuff is as they would like it. So, because we can't think of everything. I've had a busy couple of weeks with meetings. I've only managed to read this once, plus the thing that was sent through to the person I'm subbing for that got it from a resident, plus other stuff that's come through. So I would have liked to have read it 2 or 3 times, to be fair. So that's my first point. These are in no particular order. The second point is on the RP. Can we be clear to our officers, because they talk to developers, as well as to colleagues in this chamber, if you don't have an RP signed up by the time you get here for planning permission, you are going to be hard pushed to get one. And that is why we end up with all those little bits of sites dotted about where, oh, you know, can we give you, what do they call it, a mitigated amount? There is a terminology, which wouldn't pay for the front door, by the way, because, you know, at this late stage, they can't get an RP. So when the developer comes to our officers, they should say, yeah, and we've got Smith & Co. I'm hoping there isn't a Smith & Co. RP. We've got Smith & Co. on board to be the RP. And, you know, hopefully the developers rep is listening to that, because it is very important. And social and affordable housing is extremely important to this council, which leads me on to, Mr. Chairman, page 27, the SBC Accommodation and Resettlement Manager wants 90% of the affordable housing as affordable social rent and 10% shared ownership. Now I know that, oh, well, no, if we have lots of shared ownership, it helps to pay for the other. That's fine, love, but that's not what's needed. I mean, it's... Who's that?
Carry on, Councillor Harrison.
Yeah. There's a bucket of water by the door where that device could go. It is bad enough that the affordable is not really affordable to the majority of people, but, you know, that's another argument for elsewhere that we keep having. If the expert, will call this, and I know this person, and this person is expert and lives and breathes it, how they can help our residents. If our officer is saying that this is what we want, the 90% and the 10%, then this is what we should, as a committee, should be pushing for. And then it goes on to that was on page 27. On page 53, 8.6.2, it says that the applicant has commented that it would not be financially viable and would undermine the delivery of the currently proposed community infrastructure. The application has not been accompanied by a financial viability assessment to support this assertion. I can remember sitting in this chamber relating to this. London Borough of Islington, can't remember who the developer was, but it was Justice Holgate who said, if you can't come up with the goods, then it don't count. Right? You can't come up with your financial viability, it doesn't count. The council is correct, I will enforce it, or words to that effect. And I'm very sorry, but it's late at night. I cannot remember the date of that hearing, but it was Justice Holgate, London Borough of Islington. So, yeah, you prove to us that it isn't viable, then we may look at it, which is why it is so important that we have all the information that we need at the time that we are approving, if we are to approve, an outline application for such a large number. 8618. And the type of tenure, our officers live and breathe this housing, and they know the sort of tenures that are needed, not wanted, needed in this borough. And I think that they should have a big say in what it is. Not, oh, well, we'll look at that later, don't worry about that. On the section 106, page 105, I raised this at that recent planning thing I sat at. If you agree a proposal, then the 106 mitigation measures should be as near as possible specific to that area. Because where you have got very vague, oh yes, we'll give this much to SEND, we'll give this much to libraries. At the moment, and we can't speak for the future, even though we know the future is going to be changed. It goes into one huge coffer, which could actually be spent, looking at this could actually be spent in, I think I said Tunbridge Wells at that last meeting, but I should have said Sevenoaks, shouldn't I? This SEND contribution, the library contribution, the adult social care community learning, that all could be spent in Sevenoaks because this is so vague. And I think that we as a committee should start getting quite specific on this and consistent and saying, no, if we're agreeing 106s and it should be us agreeing it, then they need to be as specific to the area affected as they possibly can. I'm not saying that a library next door, because the nearest one's in Sittingbourne, I think, as the crow flies, maybe. But that's the sort of thing that we have asked again and again, Mr. Chairman. And I think that perhaps people forget my dulcet tones the minute I've walked out the door. But I'd push for that again. Next to last, I await the day that a developer is brave enough to come to this committee and propose off-site parking, which is permissible. Indeed, there's a site down in Ashford. I await the day anyone's brave enough, because all of this, oh well, you know, this is walking. Well, if everything's within walking distance, you won't need a car parking space, will you? And my last point is, as I say, I only read this once, but I could see no mention in it of the extra care housing. And if there is extra care housing, then it needs to have in there a provision that nomination rights are with Swale Borough Council, not Kent County Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. At that point, I'll take a 5-minute comfort break, please, members. 10-minute comfort break, please. Thank you. We return at 21:37. Thank you, members. Members, some sad news. I've just had some belated apologies from Councillor Winklis, who has a medical issue that's kept him away from this meeting this evening. So, from me, I hope he gets well very soon, and welcome him back to the committee. Thank you. Russell, you wanted to come back on a couple of legal matters, please.
Okay, so the 2 points which are being made. One was about the registered provider. Now, our template agreement, and we usually don't have a lot of pushback on this, is that it does actually contain a clause which says prior to commencement of development, the owner covenants that it shall have secured the exchange of contracts of the affordable dwellings to a registered provider and shall provide to the Borough Council sufficient evidence to the Borough Council's satisfaction to show that this subparagraph has been complied with, and the owner covenants that it shall not commence development unless and until the provisions of the subparagraph have been complied with. Now, I appreciate that's our starting point. There are times when that clause is occasionally changed depending on the development, but not often. The second point is negotiation by committee. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, to negotiate via committee is undermining commercial confidentiality. You're negotiating a contract. I appreciate under law, we are required to publish a copy of the agreement, which we do at an engrossment stage. And the courts have said that that's not for consultation, but it's for comment. If there's something which has been overlooked, then people can comment on it and say, this has been overlooked. That was the whole purpose behind the Isle of Wight. It was a delegation had been given to officers. They went away, exercised that delegation, but no one had any input into that. No one had actually seen it. It hadn't gone to a committee. It hadn't gone to another body. And so it was giving another form of oversight. So as a matter of course, even though we don't have to, the council makes the decision that once we get to an engrossment stage, we publish all of the agreements. So there is that opportunity to comment on it. Yeah, that's just a practical point. I can't see us, well, you know, people who are in a commercial world, if someone sat here negotiating a contract and said, well, hold on, guys, just for a sec, we're going to publish on a public website so everyone else can have a look at it to see what gain you guys are getting or why you are getting the upper hand or something. That it just doesn't work in a commercial setting. So why would you expect it here? I'm sorry. It's just. I've never had that situation where we've got to negotiate by a committee coming in and saying, let's negotiate this section 106 by sitting around and having a chat about it.
Chair.
Thank you, Russell. 1 second. There is a list.
Okay.
Councillor Hunt, please.
I think a lot of the questions and the discussion that's taken place over has all been negative. And I do just want to say that this has the potential to be a good development. What we have had come forward and what we've got the CGIs and what could be delivered is something that we look for in other developments when we have applications come forward. However, this is just completely in the wrong place. It just does not work where we've already got problems, as has been mentioned, with highways. Highways is a difficult one. We're always told. We've got KCC and National Highway saying they've got no objection to it. We'll have no leg to stand on, basically, if we do look going down that route. But there is so many other things in here. I'm not going to go over things that others have said. But if we do look at the reason why it has come here, or one of the reasons, is that there's difficult questions of policy interpretation. And it's not a straight cut case that this is recommended for approval because it absolutely should go ahead. We need to really be thinking hard because it's not clear. It does state, when we look down at the conclusion, that there is, if I'll just give me one moment, in paragraph 8.27.40, it states the cumulative harm that has been identified is significant. And whilst the officer with the recommendation has sort of said that it won't outweigh the benefits, let alone significantly demonstrably outweigh them, we've heard tonight other things that the committee have raised. I'd say raised one point on noise, and with the parameter plans coming forward, we haven't got all those details for us to be able to make a decision on that, unless the only thing I can see at the moment would be to refuse. I think there's so many parts in the conclusion that it's not meeting various policies of our own. I think there is parts, especially on noise, the MPPF even, for instance, states that planning policies and decisions should also ensure that new development is appropriate for its location, taking into account the likely effects of pollution on health, living conditions, natural environment, potential sensitivity of the site of the wider area to impacts that could arise from the development. And one of those points is identify and protect tranquil areas which have remained relatively undisturbed and prized by noise and prized for recreation and amenity value for this reason. One point I raised was a crematorium. That hasn't been considered whatsoever. And we've got the parameter plans. We were also told that the gas pipe runs through the sports hub. That's why the sports hub's been chosen. It's pitches and not residential. So there is going to be no change to that if we agree this tonight. Secondary school provision has been mentioned. It's got a clawback of 10 years if it doesn't come forward, that they can go back and request the land. We've heard that the application with the Norfolk Quinton Road has been going on for 5 years already. I can't see that being delivered, and we'll probably end up with no secondary school at all for this development. And why Section 106 money is requested, at the moment, I know that you can't get into the local schools. If you do get in, the closest secondary school to this at the current time is Westlands, and I've spoken to the principal of that school numerous times about school places. And one of the things that they say is parishes such as Bobbin do get priority over that school. But when you add another development of 2,500 into the parishes, that school it fills up before you even get out of those parishes. So that isn't going to work. The 35% affordable housing doesn't reach the policy of 40% that we ask for. And I think when you look at all the balance of this additional things that have been mentioned tonight, I can't see that we can approve this.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
One last thing.
Is it a question?
It's yes.
Go on then. Make it into a question, please.
I will try to now. If it does go ahead, however, I will propose, and I'll ask if I can make a proposal as a question, that the Section 106 does include upgrades to Bobbin Village Hall up to 236,000 plus VAT, as has been requested, and that a clawback is included that if a community hub of a village hall nature is delivered on the site, that obviously that money could be clawed back, but in conjunction with the Bobbin Village Hall Committee and Parish Council to discuss how that would work. So there is, if it could be transferred to the Village Hall Committee, because there's no point having two village halls. If you're going to upgrade one, you don't need another, etc.
I'm happy. I'll take the last speaker first, and then we'll go to any proposals. Okay. Councillor Bonney.
Okay. I was going to say, if you want a second.
Can make it snappy, please.
All right, okay. So 3 things. So I'm not suggesting negotiating a Section 106 by committee. What I'm expecting to see is a final document of the mitigation that we're expecting. So what we find time and time again is slippery wording or wording that's sloppy, and the unintended consequences that you can't make that mitigation stick. And we've all seen it. Now, there are other councils who have a Section 106 policy where effectively when it comes to a committee, they get the committee paper and you get a copy of Section 106 that's been negotiated and supplied. And in fact, that's what the inspector was expecting at the public inquiry for Highstead Park, but that clearly wasn't the case. So that's the first point. The second is a question, and so is the third. So the second's an easy one. I've previously said about internal estate roads, which are our responsibility and not KCC's, but what we wanted to make sure, or certainly I did previously on other applications, is that they're to an adoptable standard so that KCC can adopt them should they wish to in the future. Do we have that as a condition nicely and clearly set out?
Through you, Chairman, we wouldn't need to at this stage because access within the site and layout is a reserved matter, so we deal with that.
But we could set that now as a condition so that it's clear from the outset that all internal roads need to be to an adoptable standard. There's no reason why we can't do it at this stage.
But there's no reason to do it because it's dealt with by reserved matters. So the time to put conditions onto that effect would be written.
No, so just to be clear here, if this does go ahead and is approved, I think we want to clearly understand that what is presented and then comes forward in the reserved matters, because they're going to be putting a reserved matters in. There's no good at putting a condition on it when they've already put the application in. That's reversing it. We need the condition now so that when they put their reserved matters in, it applies and they meet that condition. They can show that they can discharge that through their design, I think. The other one is, what have we got in terms of a stewardship vehicle?
There isn't a stewardship vehicle proposed at this time.
Okay, well, that's going to make it a bit tricky, I think. We've in other big schemes, we talk about stewardship vehicles and how they're going to be set up. How are the open spaces going to be managed, the external estate layouts? This is 2,500 houses. They're not going to be built out in one go. There's obviously going to be a phasing plan, but there needs to be an overarching entity and coordinating this. We've got no visibility into that at the moment.
Condition 14 secures an open space strategy and condition 15 secures open space scheme of management. So that is, those are the mechanisms to safeguard the management and delivery of the open space.
But it's not just open space, is it? It goes wider than that. There's space that isn't open. So we've got ancient woodland and how that's managed, because that will remain in the ownership, presumably, of whatever entity it is. Then you've got the internal road layouts and the verges, etc., and any community facilities, how that will be then dealt with.
So condition 12, which sets out all the matters that should be addressed within the reserved matters submission. There's a series of requirements for landscaping, and then there's requirements for parking and internal roads, requiring the specification of the access to the development parcel, parking, width and configuration of the proposed carriageway layouts, street lighting, services, etc., etc. So there is that detail is secured through condition 11.
I understand the detail for delivery of those, but the ongoing management of them is normally through an estate vehicle. I don't see that here. Do we know whether it's going to be members of the community or the parish council's going to get roped into this? Is it going to be capitalised ahead of it? Because you can't start off with a nil balance if you're going to be managing these. I do think that missing the stewardship vehicle seems a bit of a strange one.
Simon, in addition to the conditions already there, do you believe that a stewardship vehicle would be beneficial?
I mean, it would be something that we would need to discuss with the applicant. But I mean, there could be some benefits in a stewardship vehicle, but it would depend on the the duties of that vehicle, and the devil would be in the detail, I guess.
So things like we can't issue parking tickets, all that practical stuff when you have an estate. And this is the biggest gripe, I have to say, being a ward member, is hearing people go, "Oh, but Swales put a ticket on this." Well, no, it's a private estate. We can't do it. Those sorts of things. So I think this is the right time, when you've got this outline, to set the parameters for that. This is the place now, so that all the things that stem from it, so all the detail flows from it, and everyone understands at what point that comes in.
Okay, point taken. Thank you. I've got Councillor Clark and then Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going through the report again, I've got lots of highlights, most of which I won't bring into this debate, but I bring in item 8.2.13 on page 37. Even if the tilted balance is engaged, this does not lead to an automatic assumption that planning permission should be granted for housing, etc., etc. 8.2.14, whilst acknowledging that the delivery of housing and economic growth is a key objective of the local plan, the need for housing and jobs does not justify harmful development at any cost. 8.4.10 on page 40, as noted above, residential development conflicts with the local plan settlement strategy. We've done healthcare, we've done the community centre, we've done the primary school.
I didn't think you was going to name them all, Councillor Clark. There's a number, yeah?
Yeah, 8.4.60. The proposal does not satisfy the criteria contained within policy DM31, which would allow development to take place on BMV land. The proposal is contrary to the local plan policy ST5 DM31 and paragraph 187 of the MPPF. The loss of BMV land weighs against the proposal.
How many more have you got, Councillor? Two.
The important local countryside gap.
Yep.
That I would raise as well as an objection.
You're giving too much away now as the way you're thinking, Councillor.
Sorry?
You're giving too much away as to the way you're thinking.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
And the final point I would raise, Mr. Chairman, we've got 198 hectares here, and as one of the speakers said, there is a plethora of wildlife and flora and fauna, etc. If we're going to build on that, and we're going to put all these 2,500 houses in, plus all the rest of it, how can we then turn around and say we're delivering biodiversity net gain? We can't, because we're losing 198 acres that currently house all this wildlife, flora and fauna. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed, it's 4 minutes to 10. I propose extending standing orders. Thank you very much. Before bringing Councillor Harrison, Ian, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's only really to say that Councillor Clark is right in many respects. Don't agree on all of them, but most of them. And that's what the committee report says. That it acknowledges that there were conflicts with policy. I would strongly suggest that the committee doesn't focus entirely on the negatives and the harms. There are benefits. They're also listed in the committee report. I'm not going to go through them point by point, but I can if you want me to. There is that balance, and there is a planning balance section. An important element of your considerations, in my opinion, and recommendation to you, is that we acknowledge that the local plan is out of date because we haven't got a 5-year housing land supply. We have to acknowledge that the requirement to do a review of the local plan hasn't been met. This is delivering 2,500 houses at a time when we haven't got a 5-year housing land supply. You have to give that significant weight. I can't see how you could give it less weight. You are achieving 35% affordable housing. That's more than what we're achieving on any other sites, and it's not achieving the 40% policy requirement, but 35% of 2,500 is still a lot of affordable housing that should be given significant weight. We're giving weight to the harm arising from not achieving that extra 5% that the policy requires. But there are benefits to this scheme, which you also have, in my opinion, have to have in mind when you do your planning balance exercises. And the MPPF is an important material consideration that you have to have regard to, and you'd be erring if you didn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Harrison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I met with a number of RPs, senior people, and one of the things which when I'm sort of banging their heads and saying, why aren't you accepting affordable housing on all these sites? You know, we desperately need it. And they said, because the developer comes to us too late. I am aware of the condition we have that Mr. Russell said, where prior to the commencement of the development, you'll have somebody signed up. But the RPs are saying that is too late, which is why I am saying to this committee, I don't want to have to be here permanently to make sure it goes through. No offence to you, Mr. Chairman. But the RPs are saying we need to be involved at a very early stage. So when the developers are talking to the officers in confidence, we don't need to know anything about that. But you need to say to them, you need to be talking to the RPs, because they need to be involved at that very early stage. You saying, well, here's what we got approved, almost, roughly, you're going to come on board. No, too late now, because we would have wanted to do this, this and this. So that is the reason why I raised it, and I'll continue to raise it every time I come here. The other point about negotiation by committee of 106s, I would never dream of suggesting that. But as a matter of fact, this committee has delegated to the chairman, it was chairman as well, the chairman and spokes, to go away and negotiate with the developer to increase the percentage of affordable housing. And those members came back with an increase in the affordable housing. Councillor Barnicott, Councillor Truelove, and I believe it was Councillor Henderson. So that is a matter of fact that's the sort of thing this committee did to actually get things over the line. I could not, in all honesty, Mr. Chairman, sit here and refuse this application, because I don't think there is enough evidence to refuse it. But I do have some concerns in terms of nailing down the 106 stuff, and a few other things that I've heard tonight. I would, I know you've moved the proposal. If need be, I would move that we defer it for our concerns to be ironed out and brought back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Right, I see no further hands. Just bear with me. There's things that concern me. Okay. And now is the time to refresh some of those concerns. We've heard significant commentary relating to highways impact, predominantly the A249. Everybody in this room uses the A249. Can't get away from it. It has good times and it has particularly really bad times. We can't look to the future and we can't think that the 249 may in time gain 2 extra lanes. We did that on the M25, and when it became from 2 lanes to 3 and to 3 to 4, it still has flipping busy, excuse me, as it was then as it is now. People want to use it. They want to use that main route. I'm concerned about the water, both freshwater and wastewater. But again, as we've heard, those matters are for the Water Authority, both provision and extraction, to ensure that is met, not for us. School places. We hear weekly about school place issues, whether from Sheppey or whether from Faversham or whether from Sittingbourne. It is everywhere. Do we have enough school places today? I think the answer is no, we don't. We've already heard that one school is still being chatted about. We don't know when that's going to be concluded. That's a big concern. Wildlife mitigation. Yeah, I love the wildlife. I'd be foolish to say, living in this part of the world, I didn't appreciate the wildlife. Skylarks in particular, you don't sit down and have a chat with skylarks and say, this time next year you're going to be over there. You know, they're not silly creatures. They've been here for an awful long time and they understand their habitat far better than we do. And with respect, the people that put mitigation in to say, we know where they're better off. I also take the two words significant harm really seriously. Anything in an application that mentions it will have significant harm. When we talk about this balance, we have to balance the rights and the wrongs, the good and the bad, shall we say, the pluses and the minuses of the application. That's one part of it. Appropriate in location, we heard. It's a great application, but not there. We could use that an awful lot. And the question would be, so where do we put it? Because we don't have an abundance of sites where we can simply build potentially 2,500 houses without it, respectfully, without it creating damage and harm to Swale. Generally, that's highways, that's school, that's medical. We didn't even really touch on the medical issues. I understand the affordable housing side very well. And I love the part that, or the point that Councillor Harrison made, negotiation. Really happy to negotiate. If it's 35%, 35 is quite easily 38, and then it's nearly 40, isn't it? It's not a difficult sum. On 2,500, assure me, it's not a difficult sum. So I think that's something, again, bringing back on what Ian said, there are clear positives to it as well. We don't have a 5-year supply. We don't have a plan that says we can march ahead and everybody's happy and everything's going to be really rosy, even for the skylarks, because it's not. That is not in place. Those deadlines have been missed for whatever reasons, but we are where we are. And we have to make that judgment. I think I've been fair to everybody to allow you to ask questions. It has been proposed, it has been seconded. Recommendations, Councillor Hunt. The proposal is to approve. Do you want to make a recommendation in addition to what's on the table?
To add
an addition, yes, please.
The section 106, as I laid out before. Do you want me to do it again?
Yes, please, so we get it right.
So that's up to 236,000 plus VAT for necessary improvements to Bobbin Village Hall, including kitchen upgrades, additional storage space, extension and improvement of car park, connection to main sewer system and electrical upgrade. and that there is a clawback on there that if a community building is delivered on site and that this requirement isn't needed at the village hall, then that section 106 money can go back. I think it also needs to be prior to occupation of the first phase, because as residents move in, they will start using that facility.
Yep.
But any discussions with any new hub should be through the village hall committee and parish council.
I'm happy with that, members. Agreed. Thank you very much. Yeah, by me. Any other? I'm going to go and Councillor Jays, as you've not spoken yet, please.
Thank you, Chair. With that additional amendment, would that be index linked? Because we don't agree that amount now, and who knows what the oil price is going to do to inflation. And all you can afford is a fridge in there. So
I believe it would be.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Obviously, we've got in the papers in front of us the tabled update tonight that the application is willing to do that. I don't see why we wouldn't accept that money from the applicant and have an additional community space. As communities grow, we need more community spaces. We've got Scockles Road on the island. They're proposing community centres, despite there being two others in nearby. So I think it should be as well as, not just we'll upgrade this village hall. I think we need more spaces. There's so many groups that want rentable spaces in this borough. So I think it should be as well as. And the developers have said in their table update they're willing to make contributions.
Councillor Hunt, you're willing to strike that last line?
Not quite. The concern I have with that is when you get two village halls or similar centres, you then get them competing against each other. And what you could do is, if you have a new building, you then wipe out that other building. So you don't get the benefits of the joint venture with it. What you end up with is pushing out an original village hall because it doesn't get the benefit that you've got of a newer hall down the road. So I think it is better to have joint working on that rather than something new where you could be in competition.
Want to come back?
Yeah, I think you can stop the competition if they're run by the same people. If they were both run by the Village Hall Committee, they expand across two sites. We've got West Faversham that runs various community centres. So I think if they're run by the same people, that takes the competition out and means you can invest across your various sites.
The only thing I would say to that, we don't know whether it's going to be, Yeah,
that's the thing. You don't know whether that's going to be happening. The other thing that I had to mind is, I might probably just need officers to comment on this as well, because if a community hub is delivered, that is mitigating the development, whereas is also a requirement for an additional village hall actually needed. Does it meet that requirement that we can ask for 106 money when they're delivering it on site?
Ian? Simon? Who wants to pick that up? Come on.
Well, if you can justify that it mitigates, that you both are there to mitigate, so both the contribution and the village hall, then yes, provided it meets those still tests. It strikes to me, it just seems a little bit to me that maybe it's a bit over the top to be asking for 236,000 and a village hall separate. Let's take away the competition element of it, but it's a legal test which you go through.
Where are you going with that, Councillor Hunt?
I'll leave it as I originally.
That was seconded and that was agreed. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, I have a little bit of concern that if the current Bobbin Village Hall receives this monies from the developer and they get on quickly and spend it and do what they need to do with their extensions and etc., then there's another hall built on the development. are Bobbing Village Hall Management Committee going to be required to pay back the 236,000 quid to pay for the new hall? That is my concern.
Legally, I don't know where we'd stand on that.
If you've handed over the money and you've spent the money, you can't pay it back.
You can't give it back, no.
Yeah. Yeah, there would be there's usually a clause which says that unless you spend it within a particular period of time, you must hand it back.
Yeah.
But once you've spent it, you've spent it. But I think here the question is slightly different, isn't it? It's about are you talking about either giving them money or delivering a second hall, or is it a case of, I'm going to say both. I think the developers kind of indicated as part of the application there'll be a community hub, and has agreed to pay the 230,000 as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, we probably don't even have to go through the soil test, and if that's what the developers agreed to. So actually, in a way, you are getting both. But what happens after that, whether or not this competition wipes one another out, I don't know.
Chair. So that is my understanding, is that we would get a community hub and then the additional village hall money. So I don't think we should be wiping out the developer's obligation that's already been negotiated and agreed for a new community hub. So I wouldn't support this particular amendment. I'd support an amendment that just says contribution towards this Bobbing Village Hall. So if you want to take out, if the proposer wants to take out that element, then I'd support it.
You hear that, Councillor Hunt?
I do. The issue I've got, and again, officers need to clarify this, is that the community hub doesn't actually say it being a village hall. It's talking about an area where there is a community. It could be shops, it could be anything. There's nothing in there that actually specifically says it is a community centre, village hall, etc. I don't know if that's my correct understanding.
All we need to do, Chair, is just to add in an amendment for the contribution towards Bobbing Village Hall. Simple as that.
That's what I would suggest.
Yep. Okay. If it's going to make it easier, but I think we do still need clarification if there's a village hall in there.
Yeah, I think what it says is this one here. Support. Here. So the community centre for the following can be for one. So either as a indoor sports, recreational, fitness, or halls or meeting places for the principal use of the local community. So it's whatever falls within use class F2B. So yeah, they could possibly conflict with one another, but it's an outline application where they're giving themselves an ability to go one way or the other. Now, I'm pretty sure the developer wouldn't want to kill their own development by having competing uses. So there might be some benefit into simply leaving the community centre and what that is used for as part of the application. Yeah, because these things are going to evolve in anyway over time, and then collecting the contribution, which is what the developer is offering. So there might be that value of just saying, we'll take the money, please, thank you, and give it to the community, to Bobbing Village Hall.
Yep, I'm happy with that. With that clarification, and I think it still needs to stand that the Village Hall Committee, as it stands, and the Parish Council are included in negotiations with whatever comes forward. But happy with that now. That's been clarified.
Councillor Gibson, do you want to come back on that?
No, that was what I was going to say.
Anybody else? Councillor Bonney.
Can I just propose that we add in a condition that all internal estate roads are to an adoptable standard? Do you second that?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Oh, there you go.
Members happy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Okay.
Great, thank you.
And that I think we should have something in here about having a stewardship vehicle. We should have a condition in about stewardship vehicle acceptable to the council, so that when the first application comes forward under the whatever it is, reserve matters, that they identify their structure and how it's all going to work.
Sorry, can I just get some clarification on this? Because this usually we talk about delaying negotiation and stuff like that. This sort of thing, what that stewardship vehicle looks like, always slows down that process, right? So what do you have in mind? Are you talking about a management company? Are you talking about the land trust coming in? But if the developer can convince them to do it, what do you have in mind? Because stewardship vehicle, in my experience, is quite a broad spectrum. Usually, the council's approach is to use management companies. On other developments, where are big ones, it could be one management company for a large area. What have you got in mind?
So I'm not the applicant here. I'm the part of the decision-making body, and the applicant should have come with this information included in here, because this is a massive site. It's 2,500 houses. So what we're saying is we would like clarity on what their stewardship vehicle is. So it's up to them to identify what it is to an acceptable vehicle that we would accept at the time. I don't know what it is they're coming up with. That is entirely up to them to tell us and justify it, and we can look at it at that point. To be honest, we should have had that now, so we understand what we're in for.
Well, you would if it was a full application, but it's not. It's an outline. So they wouldn't ordinarily come with the detail as to what that would look like, because the development's not even laid out yet.
We can condition it. That's the committee, isn't it?
Yeah,
or we
which
can
I
put
think
it
is
in
what-
as a Section 106 requirement. I don't know which one it is.
What I think Simon had suggested. I think he said under the open spaces. I appreciate what you're saying. So it's not just open spaces.
No, it's not.
But under the open spaces one, it does talk about management responsibilities. Usually when you have a LEMP condition, it says you will tell us what the management vehicle is going to be and how it's going to be funded. So if you want to delegate a wording of a condition, do you think we can do it at this stage? Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll delegate that to officers to get the appropriate wording. So when it comes back, should it come back as a detail, it's included within that.
Yes. So that's the proposal. We've got a seconder.
Members?
Yep.
That is seconded. Members agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Right. Councillor Jays.
Are we out of proposals and just on to general debate, Chair?
We've passed general debate. We're on proposals.
I would have thought we were still in questions, then went to proposals.
No.
May I have a small section on general debate?
No.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Any proposals? No. Right, that has been proposed and that has been seconded and debated extensively. So with those conditions, if you are minded to approve, those in favour of the proposal, please show.
Chair, can we get a recorded vote, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yes.
Sorry, Chair, are we voting on the full
You are
proposal
voting
with the amendment?
with the two amendments, yes. Or three. Was it two or three? Three. Yes.
So if I can just clarify those three amendments, it's the 236,000.
Correct.
Index linked for the village hall.
Correct.
The internal estate roads to an adoptable standard is conditioned.
Correct.
And a condition relating to a stewardship vehicle, but the wording of that condition is delegated to officers.
Correct.
Right.
So you are voting for or against. Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Marchington. Councillor Speed.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
Against.
Councillor Angela Harrison. Councillor Lloyd Chapman.
Against.
Councillor Monique Bonney.
Against.
Councillor Claire Martin. She's not here, is she? Councillor Claire Martin. No, sorry. Councillor Paul Stephen.
Against.
Councillor Elliot Jays.
Against.
Councillor Shelley Cheeseman.
Against.
Councillor Peter MacDonald.
Against.
Councillor Charles Gibson. Councillor Andy Booth, 4. Councillor Simon Clark.
Against.
That's everybody. That is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is 4 in favour and 10 against. So that is not approved. And we're not there yet. Hang on. At this point, I'm going to go to the officers based on that decision, just to give us a flavour. 1 second, Councillor Harrison, as to firstly the impact of that decision potentially on this council. Ian, please.
In terms of impact, there's potential risks, but that sort of depends on where you go from here. There's options still available for what to do with the item, whether you look at a deferral or a refusal. In terms of not approving it, there's extension of time agreed until the 10th of April, so there's a risk of non-determination appeal if we haven't determined it before then. If it's refused, then there's a risk of an appeal. The potential impacts.
All right. Okay, thank you. Please, Joey.
Thank you, Chairman. So what the Constitution says I do next is I invite you to consider a deferral. The Constitution says to the next meeting of the committee, that's next Thursday. I'd rather bypass that bit. The reason that the Constitution sets that out is to allow officers to work with the applicant potentially to resolve or provide more information on matters raised at committee. That can be particularly pertinent with larger scale applications, and that would reflect the considerable time and effort that goes into the preparation of an application of this magnitude on behalf of the applicant team, the officers and new members in having considered it. And it would make sure that we have the fullness of the information that members require before us for you to make that decision. It is for you to decide if that would be helpful. That is completely your gift if you think more information may be beneficial. And it's absolutely fine to do that, to say we are not ready to say no at this point in time. So the next step, according to the Constitution, is to invite the committee to consider if it would like to defer the application for more information to be provided. Thank you.
My immediate concern for deferment is non-determination, because we can't fit it into a cycle. Or can we? Did you say the 10th of April?
The 2nd is the next committee, next Thursday.
Yeah.
Then the 21st of May.
Yeah, I wouldn't put over. There is a risk of a non-determination appeal after the 10th of April. That probably would have been true at quite a few points in the 4 years that the application's been with us. I wouldn't overly be swayed by that as a risk, because if they'd end up at appeal if they went through non-determination. If they go through a refusal, they could still end up at appeal. So I don't think that would necessarily change the outcome. Deferral is perhaps sensible in this case because you've raised various points. There are harms, there are benefits. It would be logical for officers to broach those with the applicants and attempt to address them and put something back before you in due course. It clearly can't happen by next Thursday because the report's already been published.
Yep.
I'd be surprised if it happened on the 21st of May because there's clearly matters to cover.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Just a question on deferral, which...
Councillor Gibson.
Sorry.
Apologise. Councillor Harrison. I did see you, didn't I?
You did, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was going to propose that we defer the application. I'm fine, it's just getting late.
Chair, sorry,
Yeah.
point of order.
Person.
Yeah, members, 27 minutes past. Are members happy that we stand down on standing orders?
Yeah.
Yep, thank you very much. Councillor Harrison, continue.
So, yeah, I am not prepared and wasn't prepared to refuse. I would much prefer that we get the information that we're interested in. You know, my interest is 106 as well as RPs, blah, blah, blah. So I would be prepared to move that we defer this so that the officers can go away and talk to the developer.
Thank you. That is the proposal. Councillor Gibson.
Happy to second that. I agree with Councillor Harrison. My question on us doing that is, does the deferment make it a continuation of this meeting, i.e. the same members have to be in attendance, or can we, we're just thinking particularly of Councillor C. Martin, who obviously was unable to, but she could join us and vote next time.
Yeah. You're more than happy to come back, more than welcome. Thank you.
Well, we shall see if I'm required.
Yeah. Councillor Hunt, you're now talking to that.
Yep, I agree with that. I think there's been enough said that the developer's heard to go back, but there is also some things that have said tonight which I don't think are quite right. And I think we need some clarification on some of these things, especially over the water, because the report clearly states that Southern Water say there is no concern over water connection and they can put fresh water to the development with no issues at all. It's foul water that is the problem. And we need to really understand if there is, and I know it's the water company that have to deliver that infrastructure, but what the report says is that there's an informative on there that the applicant has to discuss with Southern Water details of how they can do that. And within those discussions, I think they could quite easily say it's going to take them 4 years.
Yeah.
And then that does mess up the 5-year supply, which doesn't give us then as much weight that we are being told in that instance. So we really do need to be clear on what delays there could be outside of this process with water companies, etc., because it does make a difference in our 5-year supply.
No, that comment has been recorded, so thank you for that. Councillor Jays, you're talking to a deferment.
I am indeed, Chair. So 2 items I think we want officers to look into also is the applicant's proposing 2 hectares short of what's required in DM17 for formal and outdoor sport space. They're also offering £1 million less than what they should be towards swimming pool contributions. But they were happy to do £250,000 for the village hall, but they wanted to spend. So they've offered £500,000 when it should be £1.5 million for swimming pools. So I think we need to be working these figures up as we do with the housing numbers. Should be 40% affordable. They're offering 35. If we can work that up, it can make this site more acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Bonney.
Yeah, so if they're not meeting their threshold and they said it's not viable, then we should be getting a viability assessment and have the. And why I asked for that is because clearly if viability changes and so they don't have to pay their acute care NHS contribution and that comes out the bucket, then that makes things rather more affordable and that could be an uptick in the affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. That has been proposed and seconded. We will be consistent and record. Councillor Thompson, you're voting for a deferment with those comments added to against. Councillor Paul Stephen.
Against.
Councillor Julian Speed.
For.
Councillor Peter MacDonald.
Against.
Councillor Charles Gibson.
For.
Councillor Peter Marchington.
Against.
Councillor Elliot Jays.
For.
Councillor James Hunt.
For.
Councillor Shelley Cheeseman.
For.
Councillor Lloyd Chapman.
Against.
Councillor Simon Clark.
For.
Councillor Angela Harrison. Councillor Bonney.
Against.
And me 4. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is 8 in favour of deferment and 6 against deferment, with no abstentions. That therefore is deferred for dialogue between the applicant and the officers, with those points as made by members of this committee. Members of the public, it's not the answer you first cheered to, but it's not against the answer you first cheered to, if you understand that. I'm sure you do. That meeting will be held at the earliest convenience to fit in with the timetable of meetings of this council. That brings us to the close of this meeting. Thank you very much for your participation, members of the public and parish councillors. Members of this committee, thank you very much indeed. Have a safe journey home. And I close the meeting officially at 22:33. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Wow. I hate